My first year in middle school, I was introduced to study hall. And this is the first period class that was designed to take attendance for the school and to give students a few moments in the morning to finish up any homework they had and study for upcoming tests. And this being study hall, I had a teacher that aggressively enforced the study in study hall. I remember me and my friends always trying to cheat the system in order to hang out. And we would get really close and whisper each other, talking about life, who's dating who, or talking about the new game that just came out. And even we passed notes from time to time. But when the teacher would catch us, she made it her point to discipline us. And she didn't just start send us to the outside or send us to the principal's office. She became really clever in the way that she disciplined us. She would bring up my grade to prove that I needed more time studying, or she would split me and my friends, put one of us on one side of the class and the other on the other side of the class so that we couldn't whisper anymore. So then we got really clever at pretending to study when she was watching. We looked like we were in our book studying, and then when she turned around, we fooled around. We asked if we could go outside of the class in the hall to quiz each other, but in fact we're just talking in the hallway, hanging out, and she couldn't just suddenly show up. We got really good at pretending to look like we were doing what we were supposed to be doing. And the funny thing was, our grades reflected a student that did not study. You see, Paul in Philippians chapter 2 describes something very similar to this idea. But instead of a test, he talked about trials, such as going through a hard time, facing adversity or persecution, and what it looks like to take full advantage of life as our study hall. You see, Philippians chapter 2, 12 through 15, Paul tells us, "Therefore, my beloved, as you have always obeyed, so now, not only as in my present, but much more in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent children of God, without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as a light in the world." You see what Paul is saying, this group of people, the Philippians, these people are taking full advantage of their study hall, their spiritual lives. And they are starting to look like they are the light of the world. And Paul talks to this church saying, you guys are killing it when it comes to working hard for Jesus. You guys are representing Jesus well to the world. And because of your faithfulness to God, God has shown his hand to be guiding them, to be growing them, and that it's evident in the way God is working through them. We need to take full advantage of the life we have, the study hall that God has given us. And Paul talks about working out your salvation with fear and trembling. This fear is not the paralyzing fear, but a motivating fear. Like the fear of an upcoming test. We want to do well. We want to be well versed on the test, prepared for every possible question so you can get the highest grade on the test. And the test is our trials. The trials of life, such as when you lose a loved one or face a dark period in your life or don't feel like you're worthy of life. But being those who pass the test by taking full advantage of the study hall before the trial, by making their faith a priority, by devoting themselves to the reading of scripture and prayer, these people are those who come out the other side stronger and more faithful. But for those who failed the test, or they barely passed the test, or they didn't do a good grade on the test, these people either walk away from God hurt and broken, or they start to doubt more and more, or they rely on their own strength and come out the other side disappointed with God and beaten down. But they never put in the time to fully see why God allowed them to go through the trial and the growth they could have experienced through the trial. They fooled around during the study hall, living the life they wanted to live in the way that they saw fit, and they miss the mark, losing out on what God wanted for them. But don't miss the next part. That it is not you that passed the test, but it is God who worked in spite of you. This is the fundamental difference between faith-based salvation and work-based salvation. When you serve God, it's out of a response of His salvation that was given to you. There is nothing you can do to earn God's favor. It is solely God's grace. And if you receive His grace, your response will reflect how you understand God's grace. So are you the person who is obeying God out of a response of His amazing grace, which inspires you to work faithfully, growing in the Word, and becoming a part of God's community? Or are you the foolish person who takes pride in your own ability to serve and boast in every way that you serve, then grumble and complain when you don't like where God has given you opportunity to be the light, but you want to do your own thing than the godly thing? This is the difference between a faithful Christian and a fake Christian. So where do you line up? How do you respond to God's grace? And are you prepared to pass the test?